All right, everybody, welcome into KBO Chats Live. I'm your host, Sam Paskey, alongside Eric Halterman, and we are breaking down everything KBO on tonight's slate, a brand new series. We're going to talk about little dinos, talk a little bit about the heroes as well. I'm wearing the dinos cap here, Eric, as you can see. As when we take a look at the standings, looks like the dinos' dominance might be numbered here. Not looking that good. How are we feeling right now with the dinos atop the KBO standings?
I mean, they did beat the Eagles last night, so that's something. Got to give them credit for that. They avoided a 2-game sweep, I guess, the series that was shortened by rain. Not great for them though. Their win ended a streak in which they were 1-6. That's the worst stretch of 7 games they've had all year. I think they might have had a 5 out of 6 losses earlier, but nothing this bad. So they're as fragile as ever. They got injuries piling up too. Aaron Altair is out, been out a few games with a thumb issue, still out as of right now. Minwoo Park, their leadoff guy, out with a hamstring. And Jin-Sung Gong, who was the surprising breakout star in the early season, he left with a thumb injury too. So one of the things I mentioned about them in the past, that part of the reason they were able to pull off to such a lead was that good health. And if that's fallen a bit, they are fragile. They're not unbeatable by any means.
Yes, in case you're just tuning in, KBO Chats Live. You're diving right into it, talking about the dinos atop the standings, but maybe not for long with that health. Aaron Altair, someone we talked about on Monday, being a key cog. Make sure he's healthy in there. The foreign batter still not really with the team, and that might have the dinos fall in the standings. So I got to wear the hat while they're still number one. Looking around the standings before we dive down into the lineups for today. Anyone standing out? Heroes, Bears still at 2-3. I see the Giants, number 7, 4-game winning streak. They've never really seriously been in our conversation, but maybe should they be at this point?
Right. I mean, it's pretty tight 3 through 7. There are only 4.5 games separating those 5 teams for the final 3 playoff spots. Definitely Giants making a surprising charge. And Twins looking legitimate again. They're actually beating some real teams. So if you count the Tigers as a real team, which I think you have to, given that they're in the playoffs still at this moment. And they're your pick to go to the Korean series. So we'll call that a good win too. Wiz still on the whole making a good charge, even though they lost a couple games to the Heroes. No real shame in that. I believe they were tied with the Tigers right before last night's game. I don't remember if they briefly held a playoff spot for even one day, but it's a much more wide open race than it's been in a while. It's exciting to watch it unfold for sure.
Yes, it very much is. Very tight again. It looked like maybe a couple of those leaders were separating from the pack, but now we're right back into it. Teams fighting for that playoff spot, as you got the Tigers right now currently in that 5th spot. So let's take a look at the lineups here, diving right into it. We'll start with that Tigers team we're just talking about and taking on Mike Wright and the NC Dinos. This Tigers team, like we said, not a complete scrub team, so I don't see this as a complete gimme for the Dinos. They do have looks like the better pitcher. I can't really tell if those similar ERAs exactly the same. What are we looking at for this game and this series?
Yeah, it's 2 teams that were performing pretty poorly. The Dinos had won 1 of 7. The Tigers had won 1 of 6. They both won their last game, so they're both trying to start a new winning streak. Teams that have been quite hot at times and not playing close to their best ball of late. 2 interesting pitchers for sure. Mike Wright was being treated as one of the top pitchers by some. People were talking about the Dinos as if they had that 3-headed monster of Chang Mo-koo, Drew Rudzinski, and Mike Wright. I don't think he ever was that. He's not bad by any means, though. But he's not been at his best lately. His first 7 starts, he had a 2.77 ERA and a 1.23 WHIP. In his last 8, it's a 5.27 ERA and a 1.62 WHIP. So again, he started as solid number 2 or better. But over his last quite extended run there, 8 starts, that's solidly back-end starter numbers. If you put it all together, it's only barely above league average strikeouts and too many walks, which is pretty mediocre. Definitely deserves a starting rotation spot, but isn't probably in the top 10 of foreign starters at the moment, I wouldn't say. Somewhere in the middle of the pack.
Do you maybe look at the competition he's been facing and maybe give him a little slack there coming off, against a game against that Deuce and Bears offense and then back-to-back KT Wiz games? I mean, these are not easy offenses to face, and he didn't do great, but he managed them. Nothing crazy in terms of runs or hits, even 4 hits in that road start against KT. Do you maybe give him a little more slack?
Yeah, I think you definitely have to. But if he was that ace that he was supposed to be, one of the top pitchers in the league, I think you'd expect him to have a shot at holding the likes of the Wiz and Bears to 1 or 2 runs. And I guess he did do that in one of his 2 starts against the Wiz. So again, not bad by any means. And the Tigers are an easier matchup. Last time he faced them, that's his best start probably in his last 6 or 7. So definitely a lineup he can handle. The Tigers are quite unimpressive on the season. They've been 7th in scoring for a while. I believe they've been passed by the Giants. They now sit 8th, which is quite poor. Preston Tucker has done a little bit more lately. He's on a 5-game hitting streak, and he will get the platoon advantage against Wright. I would have no issue starting Tucker or Young Woo Choi in this one. Wright, again, not too scary. But I wouldn't also have any issue starting Wright because the Tigers aren't particularly scary themselves.
Well, it's good news at least to hear Preston Tucker. It's kind of getting back in the flow, seeing that second homer of the month note here on rotowire.com. Because he was a guy that, I was hoping at least to see, a lot of, 5-hit nights. He's capable of doing that. Recently, he has cooled off as the summer has heated up, but hopefully maybe August can be his month. You talk about the Tigers team. Yes, they sit 8th in runs per game. They need that Preston Tucker offense. But, they have Aaron Brooks when he does start. He's not starting in this series, but, they won 13-1 against Twins when he did start. Do you maybe say, when this Tigers team has a good pitcher, that they can compete maybe with the best of them?
Yeah, absolutely. And if they make a playoff push, it's that rotation. It's Brooks, it's Drew Gagnon, it's Hyunjung Yang, who was the second best pitcher in the league behind Josh Lindblom, who's now in the majors. In theory, by default, he should be the best pitcher in the league, but he's been decidedly not that guy this year. He's been quite mediocre all around. But there's potential for him to, recapture what he had just last year. And that's as tough of a run at the top as anybody. I was more excited about the rotation earlier in the year when the guy who's going tonight, Ki Young Im, was also looking like a sort of 2-3 starter kind of guy. Like Wright, he started hot. His first 9 was a 2.96 ERA, a 1.21 WHIP, but his last 4 has been a 6.86 ERA and a 1.63 WHIP. So it's a extended stretch of the mediocre is putting it too kindly for what he's done lately. 4 strikeouts, 5 walks combined over his last 2 outings. He did have 1 8-strikeout outing in there, but on the whole, it's been decidedly worse. And that's a worry because he really didn't do a ton before this year. He was kind of a low strikeout, low walk guy who held his own as a back-end starter, and it looked like he was suddenly a high strikeout, low walk guy, which you really like to see. But he's kind of reverting to that generally mediocre self over the last few starts.
So to see which version of him we get tonight in that Dinos game. Moving on, Samsung Lions take on the SK Wyverns. This game also has a 50-50 chance of being rained out. We've had some rainy season games here, which is okay. You get the makeup games, hopefully. But tonight in this game, we got David Buchanan, a guy that I like most of the time. You seem to not be able to figure him out, but he is facing this Wyverns team that's not very good. So hopefully he might be able to have some ace level start tonight. What can we expect from Buchanan against SK?
Yeah, he's coming off 2 poor starts. 2 starts ago, or one of those 2 starts was absolutely terrible. One of his patented 8-run starts. I think he's given up at least 8 3 times, which is really surprising for a foreign starter and surprising for somebody who's got an ERA as low as 4.15, which, part of that is when he's not getting blown up, he's almost always awesome. That 4 earned runs he gave up in his last start of July looks like it might be the only time he's given up more than 2 but less than 8. He's been either awesome or terrible. And again, just 1 pretty bad and 1 terrible in his last 2. So it's definitely not his best run. But man, it's hard to overstate how bad the Wyverns have been lately. 7 losses in a row, outscored 82-17 over those 7 losses. That's an average score of 11.7 to 2.4. So you'd round it to a 12-2 is their average result over the last 7 games. That's very bad. 4 total runs in their last 5 games. I may be running out of ways to describe how bad they've been, but hopefully that should tell the picture pretty well. I think they're pretty firmly the weakest team right now. I think if I had made my power rankings today, they would be below the Eagles for the first time all year. We'll give them 3 games to climb back up out of that, but the Eagles are playing close to 500 ball lately, and the Wyverns, even in the Eagles' worst stretch, I don't know if they were getting outscored by 10 runs a game over a 7-game stretch. So it's really bad there for the Wyverns lately.
Yes, if viewers that are not familiar with the KBO want to take one thing from that, it's that they are below the Eagles at this point. We didn't know if that was going to happen this year, and it looks like it's officially happened, especially when your last non-loss was against the Eagles themselves. That is not a good stretch you're looking at there, being swept by the Twins, Wiz, and Giants. So they are bad, very bad, holding that 9th spot in all those offensive categories there. And Buchanan, that was an interesting note about, he's either sharp or he is or very dull. That's no in between for Buchanan, and it looks like he could be sharp tonight. Give me one batter here to look at. Do we still like Jamie Romack and John Choi during this bad stretch, or are we looking someone on that Lions team?
Yeah, I mean, they've been cold too. It's hard to score only 4 runs over a 5-game stretch unless just about everyone's been cold. Jawoku, by default, is the Lion who remains the only interesting Lion most of the time. I think he's pretty interesting tonight. Jungwook Lee, not an intimidating starter at all for the Wyverns. Got destroyed by the Heroes in his last start on the season as a whole. Doesn't strike out a ton of guys and walks a ton. 12.7% walk rate is well above what you want, about 50% higher than league average. So Jawoku, he's a very good all-around hitter. Only modest power is the only thing holding him back from being one of the KBO's elite hitters, but very high contact rates. Hits for a ton of average, steals a fair amount of bases, and hits at least some homers. So he's a guy I'm interested in against most weak righties, and Jungwook Lee is definitely one of those.
Looking at Jawoku there for the Lions. So moving on now, we got our question today about the Bears taking on and hosting the Giants. Bears, you want to favor them basically in any series. They're number 2, number 3 in those power rankings. What do we think of them maybe dropping 2 of 3 or even getting swept by this Giants team that has been very hot on a 4-game winning streak right now that seem to be doing just about everything right?
It's hard to see them losing all 3 because Raul Alcantara is projected to start Saturday. They don't tend to lose when he's starting. He's been arguably the best pitcher in the league for the past month, 2 months, something like that. But he's not going tonight, so they definitely have a chance to lose tonight. Young-Ha Lee has been not even mediocre, I don't think, over most of the year. He's coming off 2 decent starts, allowing 5 earned runs, though 8 total runs over those 2 against the Twins and Dinos, which is a pair of respectable opponents for sure. But if you look at runs rather than earned runs, that's still he's allowing basically 4 almost every time. And that's about who he's been. He's been low strikeouts, high walks, not giving up a ton of homers, but very, very uninspiring, very much a back-end starter profile. He had a better ERA last year, but his peripherals still were pretty uninspiring, so I don't think there's much reason to be scared of him at all. And the Giants are scoring runs. It's at least 7 in each of their last 4 games. 4-game winning streak. I think it's 7, 8, 8, and 8. Granted, it's against those Wyverns for 2 of those, but we haven't seen them hit like this in a while. There's not a ton of elite hitters on that lineup at all. If you look at those OPSs that you can see in the corner of your screen, it's a few 8s, but no 9s. but they've been hot lately. The top of that order, they've got a handful of guys who've been reliable enough, and I wouldn't be afraid of using any of them against Young-Ha Lee, Hoon-Jun, Asak-san, Jun-Woo-Jun, Daiho Lee. The top four, all of those guys have been pretty reliable. Would be looking for them to have a big night against Young-Ha Lee, even if he's been slightly better lately.
Yeah, the Bears definitely look vulnerable tonight. Maybe not in that Alcantara start coming a little later in the series, but tonight the Giants, they're hot right now. Even before their winning streak, they had that win against the Dinos, putting up 11 runs. Yes, it was just in one game, but still, you got to respect that. And they've been, maybe they're putting something together and been a competitive team that maybe not a lot of us thought, would be at this point in the year. You're talking about the lineup. I'm not seeing, Dixon Machado be a huge offensive force, but maybe during this hot streak, is he someone that you could maybe look for in a DFS role? Is he someone that's starting to produce?
I would have liked it if his price had dropped more. He's still a mid-tier at least price kind of guy, and even when he's going well, he's a guy who hits for average but not much else. Though he does have 3 homers in his last 10 games, so maybe right now of all times it'd be a time to have some interest in him. He's riding, it looks like it's a 10-game hitting streak. He's hitting .455 over that stretch with 3 homers. So that's not much going wrong there. You'd like to see him hit a bit higher in the order, but he's definitely somebody I'd have in consideration. Maybe he's justifying that mid-tier price lately. For most of the season, I felt like he was too high, but I think he's worth consideration especially given the way the team's hitting too. More guys for him to drive in, that sort of thing.
And he's got 3 RBIs in his last 3 games and getting on base, like you said, via the hit, but also via the walk as well. Walks in 4 of his last 5 games. So, maybe this defensive-minded shortstop can contribute and continue to, boost up this Giants lineup that is trying to make some magic happen. Have a good test tonight against the Doosan Bears. Moving over, before we get to our main event, wrapping up the Hannibal Eagles KT Wiz series, Chad Bell. I mean, I see him starting. I want to say, maybe I believe in him. Is he someone that's maybe turning things around, or is this Eagles going to eagle?
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off one respectable start, but it was against those Wyverns. Pretty much the easiest task in the game right now. Certainly the easiest task that Bell can face because he can't face the Eagles. And he only struck out 2 in that game, so it's not like he was elite. Pretty much everything's been bad for him this year. Low strikeouts, high walks, high homers. There's not many redeeming qualities to his stat line at all. Again, a lot of that's probably injuries. He missed the start of the year with elbow issues. He missed most of July with elbow issues. It's possible his last start indicates that he's past those issues, in which case, if he's the guy he was last year, he's a fine mid-3 ERA kind of guy last year with unimpressive but adequate peripherals. I'm not sure even that guy is somebody I'd trust to shut down the Wiz the way they have been hitting at times this season. And if he's not that guy, then it could be a ton of runs for the Wiz tonight.
Yeah, if he is turning things around, he's going to have a rude awakening when he faces that KT Wiz offense a little later tonight / tomorrow morning, wherever time zone you're on. We see him he just faced them back in June, and it's actually a while ago, but just his 3rd start ago because of those injuries. 5 runs in 5 innings, 1 home run, 6 strikeouts is a little promising, but I don't think I'd be expecting a lot from Chad Bell. So do we want to stack this Wiz lineup if this game does indeed happen?
Yeah, I think I definitely would have them as one of the top stacks. There's quite a number of generally unimposing pitchers to stack against. Bell's one of them. Young-Ha Lee, like we mentioned. Se-Woong Park, even for the Giants, we didn't talk a ton about. He's been bad for most of the year, decent lately, but still isn't somebody who should scare you away from the Bears' top bats. So it's a number of options available, but given the way the Wiz hit, And given the way Chad Bell has been pitching, I think the Wiz definitely could be the best option of all.
Yeah, Mel Rojas Jr., Betco Gong right there in the heart of that lineup. You got to respect them. Should be an interesting one. And maybe they hit double digits. Again, they've been able to do that a lot. We'll see what happens tonight. Now to the main event, the domed game. This game is indeed going to happen. Kiwoom is favored. Over-under set just a tick over 9.5. We look like we have a pitcher's duel on our hand. Good to see Jake Brigham back for the Heroes. This Heroes team is being powered by Addison Russell, and they face Casey Kelly, who isn't quite an ace, but he's not bad. He's probably on the top end of today's pitching lineup. What are we thinking with this Twins Heroes matchup?
Yeah, definitely this is the game to focus on for fantasy purposes if you're not going to be up at 4 a.m., whatever it is, your time when lineups come out, because it's in a dome. No way it gets rained out unless something strange happens. I think I've seen like 1 or 2 domed rainouts in my lifetime with a leak in the roof, but don't think you should plan around that. Yeah, we got a couple interesting pitchers here. Jake Brigham, he's back, we think. I mean, he's pitching, but it's definitely some worries there. He missed a lot of the year with an elbow injury. He came back and looked pretty good in 2 short-ish starts in mid-July. But then he missed his next start with, again, elbow worries. The fact that he only missed, I think it was just 1 that time, is a good sign, but he came back and was not good against the Lions. Again, he's going to be trusted with another start, but when you get a guy who's missed time twice already this year and looked shaky and left early in his last start, a lot of reason to worry there. But all you have to do is look at what he did his start before then to know what his upside is, if he truly is right, which he may well be. It's unfortunately a pretty difficult one to judge from the outside. If he's on, he's the best pitcher on the slate by, I think, a good margin. He was very good last year. ERA under 3 was supposed to be the Heroes' ace this year. He was their opening day starter ahead of Eric Jokic, who's been one of the best pitchers in the league. So there's a ton of upside with Brigham if he's really all there. And not a lot of reason to believe that he's really all there, unfortunately.
How about Casey Kelly, another guy that can be on, but you don't really trust. And when you see his most recent note, taking the loss against Anwa, never a good way to start. What do we think with Kelly tonight against Addison Russell and the Heroes?
Yeah, that was actually, if you read the rest of the note, he actually was pretty good in that start. He just was up against somebody who was even better. I don't remember if that was a Shiwan Jung start for the Eagles or somebody else. Kelly's had quality starts in 5 of his last 6. 3.38 ERA and a 1.34 WHIP over that stretch is pretty good. And actually, if you look over his last 10, it's a 3.69 ERA, a 1.29 WHIP. So it's really just 2 of his first 3 starts, I believe, were bad. And again, like Tyler Wilson, we talked the other day about how if you just ignore Wilson's first start, which was immediately after quarantine, his ERA looks a whole lot better. Kelly stumbled a couple times early, but since then he's been solidly better. Still not necessarily as good as he was last year. Last year he had a 2.55 ERA, a 1.14 WHIP, and was a true ace. But he's a solid number 2, number 3 kind of guy this year. Slightly above average strikeouts, not a ton of walks, not a ton of homers. He's overall a pretty good pitcher, even with that bad early stretch factored in. But he's got a very tough task against this Heroes lineup. They have gone 8-1 over their last 9. They're outscoring opponents not quite by the same margin that the Vibrants are getting outscored by, but it's an average score of 8.3 to 3.2, so an average of over 5 runs per game over that 9-game stretch in which they're 8-1. And again, it's both their offense and pitching doing well lately. It's not just an explosion on one side of the ball, scoring over 8 runs a game, allowing just over 3. So tough assignment for Kelly in this one.
Yeah, I mean, looking into this game, and when you look a little deeper, I would think Brigham would have the edge for daily fantasy today, but then you don't know what you're going to get with him if he is healthy. And then with Kelly, he does have to face this KBO offense, as we got a couple of guys tuning in late SG and DX. Welcome in. We are working the time. Replay is available anytime you want to watch that as soon as the show is over. We are working on that, much like Jake Brigham. A little inconsistent, but we are figuring it out. Who do you prefer here, Kelly or Brigham? The better pitcher or the better matchup?
If I have to put one guy in a fantasy lineup tonight, it's going to be Kelly, just because I'm quite scared of Brigham's elbow. For a larger contest, high risk, high reward plays are more rewarded in general. They're generally the smarter way to go when you need to differentiate yourself from more people and when you need to finish at the top rather than just the top half. Brigham's the most expensive tonight, and there's, that could totally tank your lineup if you invest that much in a pitcher whose elbow is not there and who gives up plenty of runs to a very hot Twins offense. I wouldn't necessarily say he has a whole lot easier, because the Twins are 10-3 over their last 13. Again, a lot of that's against the Wyverns and Eagles, but they also are beating teams like the Tigers and Bears. So they're a tough assignment too, given the pretty massive downside that comes with Brigham's elbow. I would feel safer starting Kelly if I had to put in a lineup now and wasn't able to check which of those at-risk games ends up getting rained out. I think Kelly's the way I'd go. Not a ton of comfort level starting a guy against a lineup as good as the Heroes, especially as good as they've been with Addison Russell there. But Kelly's a very middle of the pack option. He's the sixth most expensive, maybe even seventh, sixth most expensive option on DraftKings tonight, which it would generally be fair given this matchup, but given that there's an overall mediocre-ish suite of pitchers, I think he becomes more interesting.
And before we move to picks for tonight, I got to talk about Addison Russell with this KBO team. We're seeing he had a day off on Thursday. He's someone that started very hot, but we did have, maybe some concerns, hoping he didn't go back down to earth. How do we feel with him so far? 4 hits in his last 3 games before that day off against the Wiz. Is he someone that's come into the KBO and quickly making his mark, or do we still have some reservations and want to see a little bit more from him?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't done anything wrong yet. He's hitting 375, OPS 943, not striking out much, just 3 total strikeouts in his first 7 games. It seems pretty clear he's not having any issue adjusting to KBO pitching. Obviously, tiny sample, but when a guy held his own for, 5 years or so in MLB, was not a star hitter in MLB, but most guys that come over, most foreign hitters, the Jamie Romack types, have had very few MLB opportunities and didn't impress in them, whereas Russell was a playable starter at worst. Part of that was his defense, of course, but his WRC+, which again is that overall stat that sums up all your contributions and compares them to league average. His was generally in the 80s or 90s, I think, in all of his years, which means he's somewhere between 10 and 20% worse than a league average hitter in MLB, which I think definitely counts as holding your own. When you get a guy who can hold his own against major league pitching, I think it shouldn't surprise us that he's handling KBO pitching pretty easily. His price has finally gone up to a reasonable place on DraftKings. He was a pretty much everyday feature in my columns for the first week because he was priced like a scrub who had only played 3 games. Apparently the algorithm didn't know why he had only played 3 games. But I would expect him to be right up there with the best hitters in the league. Maybe not necessarily expect him to be the absolute top hitter, but definitely top 20 hitter in the league, I think, without question, and a good chance of being top 10 or better.
He's powering that KBO Heroes offense that's taking on Casey Kelly and the LG Twins tonight. Taking a look at all the games here, we do see some rain, 71% in that Dinos game, 42, 41 in these Giants, Bears, Lions, Wyverns games. Twins Heroes, best game, and it's going to be played unless something crazy happens, like you said, in that dome. What are our best 3 picks? And if you can, please make 2 of them for that Twins Heroes game, a pick and a total. That way people can for sure see some action tonight.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Some of the hardest picks are probably from that slate because, again, a lot of it is dependent on your faith in Jake Brigham's elbow. I think overall, best picks, I think I'd have to go Wiz over Eagles. Even with the Eagles being 3-3-1 over their last 7, I think picking team against the Eagles as your number 1 pick seems pretty smart. We didn't talk about Jasong Bay earlier. He's not anything special at all. It's a mediocre ERA. Is probably even better than he deserves. He's a low strikeout, high walk guy. Pretty much nothing good in his underlying numbers to suggest that he's anything close to a shutdown arm. But he's facing the Eagles, who are still the Eagles. In the Wiz lineup, I would trust to score on anybody, especially somebody like Chad Bell. So I think that would be the number 1 pick. The number 2 pick, let's go with an over in that Giants-Bears game. I guess I'm not following your rule of having 2 from that domed game, but I'll give picks for both of those anyway, even if they're not top 3. Over in this one, Young-Ha Lee, even though he's been mediocre, which is better than normal lately over the course of the year, he's pretty bad, and that Giants offense is on fire. They've scored at least 7 in 4 straight games. And Sewung Park has been better lately, but definitely not a shutdown arm, and the Bears have a very deep lineup. Bears did lose Jaewon Kim. I'm not sure for how long. Elbow pain. It ends that run of excellent lefties in the middle, and for some reason they moved Subin Jung up to the number 2 spot, who is generally a 9-hitter and deservedly so, though he's been hot lately. There's maybe some interesting cheap fantasy option, given he'll have the platoon advantage here and a higher lineup spot than normal, even though I'm not sure he's good. But I'd be happy with the over there. Pretty sketchy pitching on both sides. Excellent lineup from the Bears and a hot lineup from the Giants. I think that makes that the number 2 pick. And if we have to go something in this Twins-Heroes game, I will pick the Twins because I am very worried about Jake Brigham's elbow. Again, missed an extended period, came back 2 good starts, but then his last 2 turns in the rotation, 1, he skipped because he was injured, and 2, he left early and was bad. I can't pick that guy with any confidence, and Casey Kelly's been solid lately. Both lineups are hot. Over the course of the season, I trust the Heroes lineup more, but with the way the Twins have been hitting lately, I think it's quite close. Even though the Heroes are hot too. So I'm going to side Twins because, again, pretty equal. If I was sure on Brigham's health, even then it would only be a slight edge to the Heroes. I think Brigham at his best is slightly better than Kelly, but not by miles. And the Heroes lineup is maybe slightly better when everything's normal than the Twins, but not by a lot. So given the uncertainty there with Brigham's elbow, that's enough to tilt me towards the Twins.
And for the total on this game, in case it is the only game on the slate due to rain, do you believe enough in these hot lineups to produce against these foreign pitchers to hit that over? Or do you think that Brigham elbow problem is going to be a pretty big issue?
If I'm picking the Twins, it's because I'm worried about Brigham's elbow, which means I'm picking the over. If I were to pick the Heroes, it would be because I have faith in Brigham's elbow, and I would pick the under in that case. I think I would pair those like that.
You got to pair them up, and we're pairing with the LG Twins, Casey Kelly, hoping for a good start. Did take the loss against the Eagles, always worrisome, but he did go 7 strong, so largely a fluke there for him. Twins, Bears, Giants in the over, and then, of course, picking against the Eagles and Chad Bell is the top 3 picks. And that is all we have for you today. Take a look at the standings overall. Dinos looking to hold on to that top spot. Heroes, they have the same number of wins, so we'll have to see what happens by Monday. If someone has that top spot, someone different, maybe even the Bears, they're right there as well. So anything can happen. We'll see what does indeed happen. We can confirm 5:30 is going to be our time going forward. We will tweet that out to make sure. 5:30 Pacific, excuse me. I'm a San Francisco West Coast guy. 8:30 Eastern is our go-to time. I'm sorry. I don't even know what time it is right now with everything going on. So 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. That's all I got. Eric, anything else to add?
Oh, the one last thing, I probably should have, if I was not asked to make one of the domed picks, one of my top three, I'm sure I would have had Lions over Wyverns as the third. I mean, given the way the Wyverns are struggling lately, I think it's team against the Wyverns is an even easier pick than team against the Lions, even though you know that David Buchanan does the opposite of whatever I say. I think that's a pretty clear one if that one stays dry.
I thought we could sneak out of here without you jinxing David Buchanan, but I guess not. Buchanan now looks like it's going to give up 12 runs or something to this Wyverns team.
Sorry, David.
Well, that's all we got. Back here Monday, 8:30 Eastern. Follow us on Twitter at RotoWire KBO for all your KBO insights. That's all I got. Peace out, guys.
Thanks for coming, everybody.